Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl, and today I'm going to talk a little about two different sessions that I played. One was my meetup game for November, and the other was an appearance at Best Bet Live. But before I get into that, I recently appeared on the All In podcast. We talked a lot about the culture of poker, how it's changed as COVID restrictions ease in the casino life, and learning a little bit about the Florida poker scene. So if you're interested in that, link to that podcast in the description below. So, my meetup game for November. We do a bomb pot every dealer change, so every 30 minutes we do a $10 bomb pot, and I've said before they get absolutely crazy. Here's a quick shot of two players getting it all in. For about a 1K pot in a 1-3 game, I'd say is a pretty good game. But in that specific session, I really never got a whole lot of hands of note. Ended up losing 2.5 buy-ins to the wonderful people who came to that meetup game. But there is one hand of note. An early position player makes it $15. There's one caller, and it's on to me in middle position, and I have ace-king offsuit. I raised to 65, happy to take down the dead money, but if I get called, I'll just play in position with Big Slick. The button calls and the pre-flop aggressor and caller fold. So we're going heads up to a flop, which is queen, deuce, deuce, 2 diamonds. This is a great board for my actual hand. Ace high should be good here most of the time. I'm gonna go for a down bet, large bet on the turn strategy for this specific board. So I bet $40, not really expecting it to fold ever. Trying to keep my range as open as aces, kings, queens, ace, queen, and ace, king. So I bet $40, he calls. The turn is the 4 of clubs. Not a card I'm really scared of. Like, I expect his opponent to be playing a large range, as he may be hoping I just show some weakness and he can pounce as he's actually in position, but that's not going to happen. I bet $95, and my opponent calls again. So now I'm thinking he's closer to like 6s or 7s or something in that range. So hoping for some help on the river, but when the river's the 3 of clubs, it's kind of a gross card. If my opponent had AM like Jack 10 of clubs and just called with backdoor straight and flush draw, just not believing me, then he actually binked the run out. So for this specific board, I'm not really happy to throw out the third barrel, especially because if he has any queen, I think that's just happy to call off. Like if he had like queen 10 even that week, I think he'll just call. So I check and my opponent announces all in, and I really just believe this is a bluff 100% of the time. I'm like certain it's a bluff, but just because it's a bluff doesn't mean I can beat it. A bluffing range that even includes like 4-5 offsuit or pocket 6s, when I lose to anything he has a value and I lose to some of the bluffing range, even though I know this is a bluff, I think this is a pretty standard fold spot. I fold, and my opponent is very happy to show me 9-8 offsuit. If you're gonna go for the call rip on the river, you gotta show it down when you're bluffing. Cheers to that guy. So that meetup game did not go well for me, but I'm going to get it back in this deep 2-5 Jacksonville best bet game. For this specific table, we have Poker Traveler, E, and Matt, who are regulars on the TCH live stream, so definitely players that play much bigger, and I'm prepared to just value bet if I ever get into a hand against them. But the first interesting hand of this section is a bomb pot. For this game, it's a $25 bomb pot, so 8 players put in $25. My hand is King 5 of hearts. The flop is 9-6-4, 1 heart. As I'm in relatively late position, when it checks to me, bomb pots are a really excellent form of poker. Not because of the size of the pots or how enticing it can be, but literally just because of how understudied it is. Playing a game where everyone thinks they have this GTO strategy, this pre-flop charts and ranges developed, playing a poker hand where anything is possible is kind of a good metric to see who can really understand the game of poker rather than just memorize a system and play what's dealt to them. My opinion personally. So for me, on this board of 9-6-4, I think my hand plays very, very good here because with my king over card and my backdoor hearts, backdoor straights, if I put out a large bet, unless someone happens to have two pair exactly, it's likely going to fold through and I can just win. And if someone has a one pair and an over card hits, my second barrel should get it through. And remember, there is $200 out there, so I'm going to go after it. I bet $115, and as you can see, the first player did have a pair of nines and lets it go, as there's 6 other people behind them to act, and one pair's usually no good in this game. This specific hand, no one seemed to have anything, so we win a good-sized bomb pot to start the session.
King 5 suited, wow. Kyle getting risky.
Next interesting hand. I am in early position with ace-king offsuit. I bet $20, and I get 2. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, which is queen, deuce, 9, 2 clubs. I'm just going to go for a standard C bet with my ace-king here. I bet $40, and the button is the only caller. So we're going heads up to a turn card, gonna need some help. We actually get it with the king of diamonds, and now that I gained showdown value, I'm much happier to just check call the rest of the hand down, especially because the most obvious straight draw of jack 10 did get there with this king, so I think check call is the best move on this board. I check, my opponent bets $55, pretty easy call, did not turn top pair to just fold. And the river is a horrible, horrible card. It is the 10 of clubs. As there's a 4-liner to a straight out there, I'm pretty much ready to fold. No reason to call a large bet on this specific board. One, because my opponent could easily have a straight, and most of his bluffing range could be like queen 10, where he made 2 pair, and he's trying to bluff a better 2 pair out of the hand. I check preparing to fold, and my opponent shockingly checks back. Me thinking I have the best hand always here, I show, and he somehow decided to call the flop with a gut shot and bet the turn with a gut shot and then hit his gut shot, so that was horrible.
My name is very confused. What's your name? What's going on here?
He didn't check it back. I mean, I didn't see the hand, but there's no way he checked it back, did he?
Check it back.
Oh my. Jesus.
Next interesting hand. The graphics on this hand are off slightly, so bear with the Jacksonville best bet team, but I have pocket deuces in this hand. When it's a $10 straddle and folded to me on the cutoff, I'm going to play pocket deuces, so I called the $10. The button raises to 60. Pretty standard for a button to sense weakness and go for the dead money out there, so I don't really give my opponent too much credit for having a strong hand yet, so I'm going to make the call. The flop is an absolute dream. It's ace-8 deuce. Now, when it's ace-8 deuce, if my opponent has like ace-x, ace anything, it is my opinion my opponent will down bet this board with an ace on it, whether they have an ace or not, 100% of the time. If they have an ace, they definitely will because they need to protect against the flush draw, in my opinion. So I checked to my opponent expecting a bet, expecting to check raise right now. And my opponent checks back. Okay, that's fine. Please no club? Of course not. We get the 7 of clubs on the turn. This is the point where I think I need to take control of the betting lead and build a pot. As I flopped a set, and if my opponent had just a single ace or king of clubs, they would likely call a bet. So I bet $125. And my opponent just calls. The river is an offsuit 10, so just going for some value. There's some 2-pair combinations and ace-x's that can pay this off. I bet $220.
Yeah. Oh Kyle. Find it in your heart to check back. Oh no. Oh no.
And he bets. Looks like
it's about
220.
It's about time we pick up the phone and call the paramedics. You need to pick him up. You need to pick him up.
And my opponent raises to 600. Now remember, I do have pocket deuces here, so I'm thinking about the hand for quite a bit of time. I decide my opponent's highly unlikely to not bet the flop as a pre-flop aggressor with a flush draw, especially on an ace-high board. So I don't really consider my opponent ever having a flush.
Stupid or something. Honestly, as stupid as a stupid does.
But I still have to find a hand that my opponent could likely do this with that I'm beating to be able to call it. And in my mind, a hand that makes a lot of sense to me is ace-10 exactly. Like, I think my opponent might check an ace-10, just call, and then make their 2-pair and put in a value raise. I put a pretty narrow hard read that my opponent has ace-10 and decide to make this call. And when they show me the cards, I think I'm right because I see the ace-10 and I felt so smart for a minute. So kind of a high and low really quickly in that hand. Yep, and there you can see my pocket deuces. I really did have pocket deuces.
I told you. I wasn't lying, see?
He had
Pocket deuces. Oh,
deuces?
sick. Pocket
deuces?
deuces. He flops a set of deuces. That's a dream world.
Oh, no. He had deuces.
you
We're
call-
no longer lost.
You call pre-flop a pocket deuces, praying to hit your set, hit it. Club comes on the turn just like that. So really high compared to what we saw last night. And as we expected, Angel up big, up 2,200 just about, and Jeff stuck about 16 now with that big double up.
But luckily we're on to another bomb pot, so $25 per person. I happen to be under the gun for this bomb pot. Pretty bad position. I think personally the best position for a bomb pot is somewhere in the middle, because the person who's last to act in a bomb pot often won't get credit for actually having a hand. They usually are just putting out a bet because everyone's checked to them and they're trying to take it down. Additionally, anyone could check with a flopped set or 2-pair and be ready for that. So early on's pretty bad. It's really not great to bet into 7 or 8 people. In the back, I think bets get very little credit. So somewhere in the middle, I think is the best position for a bomb pot. That's my opinion. Comment yours below. Under the gun, 9-5 of diamonds. The flop is jack 6 deuce 2 diamonds. Now, as I said before, I'm not trying to lead out into 8 people with just a flush draw, even though it's likely good. I'm going to check first to act, planning to just call if someone decides to throw out a bet. But this actually checks all the way through. When the turn is an 8, gives me a gut shot and I have a flush draw, and no one really showed interest in the hand so far. So I'm going to go after that $200 pot with a larger sizing. I bet $120, and luckily no one had much of anything, so we get it through again. Bomb pots are so much fun.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
And once again, which is so crazy, like I'm 2 bomb pots in a row. There aren't any weird 2-pairs, any flop sets, like straight draws.
Usually you get a
flush
big
draw takes it
pocket
down.
pair in there.
If you like my rambling about theoretical possibilities with bomb pots, hit the subscribe button. It helps out the channel a ton. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Next hand of note. With 2 limps to me, I'm in the small blind with jack 4 of diamonds. Suited jack for just $3 to win 20. Deal. So I call and the big blind checks. When the flop is deuce 4-4 rainbow,
Thank God!
I flop gin and I'm first to act, but it's really unlikely anyone has any type of a hand. So I think this is a clear check spot. Hands like 5-6 may throw out a bet as well as 5-3. If someone limped with like 6s or 7s, they'll likely bet drawing extremely, extremely thin. And maybe someone will just bluff with random Broadway cards. So I have the board locked up, don't expect too much to call a bet, so I check. Unfortunately, it checks through. When the turn is the ace of diamonds, I'm really not worried about 5-3 because I think 5-3 would bet the flop nearly 100% of the time. So hoping that someone turned an ace, I'm going to check and lay the true trap of the session. And it checks all the way to the button, who bets $25. Thinking that if he does have an ace, he'll likely bet the river and I can just check raise him then, I decide to just throw in the call right now. A middle position player decides to call again, and the river is a jack. So we have the goofiest full house ever. Thinking that this jack shouldn't scare any ace off, if you had like ace 10, you should probably still go for a small bet. getting value from any worse aces or medium pocket pairs. So I check, middle position player checks, and it checks through. You know, sometimes running bad includes your traps just not working out for you. Maybe a different line of just bet gets me more money, but I play a highly risky strategy, and sometimes the traps just never get sprung. Next hand of note. I'm on the button with Queen Jack offsuit. I raise to $20. Standard 2 Broadway cards when folded to me. One of the blinds calls, and we are going heads up to a flop, which is Queen 8 Deuce 2 diamonds. Blind checks, and it's on to me. Flopping top pair. Haven't made a hand all day that sticks. For this hand, I'm just going to go for some straightforward value of a queen. There's a flush draw and a straight draw out there that can pay me off. And, you know, maybe he'll pay me off with an 8 or a deuce. So I bet $35, and my opponent calls pretty quickly. Turn is the Jack of clubs. Excellent card for me. And now my opponent bets $50. For me, I perceived this as an obvious blocker bet. I think that Jack X of diamonds or Queen X of clubs would do the exact same thing, as well as just naked flush draws. Trying to name your own price to chase the flush draw? Well, I'm not going to let that happen, especially because if like a 9 or a 10 of any suit hits the river, I'm going to hate my hand a lot. So if you have a flush draw, you are paying to see the river, sir. I just put them all in, but my opponent really doesn't have anything, so I don't understand the lead out, and he folds and I win. A final hand of note. Under the gun +1 raises to $30. I'm next to act with King 9 of clubs. I choose to make the call, suited king, find a play in a cash game, especially a deep one. And with 3 other callers, we're going 5 ways to a flop, which is King Deuce Deuce 2 spades. It checks to the pre-flop aggressor who checks, and as the pre-flop aggressor checked, it's really unlikely anyone else has a king. I should have the only king here most of the time, so I'll throw out a wager of that to about $85. It folds all the way to the pre-flop aggressor who is the only caller. The turn is the 3 of hearts. And now my opponent leads out for $225. Now, as this is an opponent who has busted 3 or 4 times throughout the session, he's visibly tilting very hard, clearly. I don't really give him too much credit for having a hand here. I think he's putting some raw aggression into the pot, trying to get a king to fold. I do think it's possible that he could have ace-king or king-queen or pocket aces or something like that, but I don't quite understand why you would check the flop if you had one of those hands and you had such a safe board to just bet your king, especially into 5 people. So I make the call. The river is the 9 of spades, and although the flush draw got there, when my opponent checks to me, it's time to come to a decision if I want to go for some really thin value or just check it down and show down top 2 pair. When my opponent checks me, I never put him on a flush draw. He was a pre-flop aggressor from under the gun +1, so he really shouldn't have a 2 here. He really shouldn't.
Yes, we know that one. Anything else?
But the hands he could have are king, queen, ace, king, king, jack. There are actually a lot of kings here that I binked pretty hard, and I do believe pocket aces may play the exact same way, so that is a hand that beats me as well. With enough hands I think I can get value from, I go for a very thin river value bet of $300, and my opponent snap calls with 7 deuce. Yeah, I think my face kind of says it all. When I rewatched this, the only other expression that came to mind that was really similar to this was,
This is... Oh, shit! Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Kyle didn't like that one. Kyle did not like that one. Kyle did not like that one. He's like, what are you doing? That was the head shake of what are you doing in the hand with 7 deuce?
Game over.
So across 2 weeks, I am on a 3.1K downswing across 11 hours. So somewhere around $300 an hour it costs me to play poker these days. It's not going to slow us down. There will be more to come next week. Thank you.